Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Broadmead Road Bridge Q&A session. My name is Matt Williams. I'm one of the leaders advisors here at the London Borough of Redbridge. We're going to run through a 10-15 minute presentation from Cllr Kam, the head of highways, who's going to explain where we're up to and the next steps on the bridge. And then after that, we're going to launch into questions and answers. You can submit your questions in written form on the right-hand side of your screen. If you tap Q&A, and then you can put your question in there. We are expecting a lot of questions tonight, and some people might submit the same question as others. So don't be alarmed if yours doesn't come up. Something similar will be going on screen, and we will make sure it gets answered. We're also going to record the session to publish online, and we're going to publish all the questions and their answers on the website as well. We really want you to get your questions in, and we will do our best to answer all of them. Please do keep them PG. We're hoping to have a productive session. I just want to introduce Cllr Kam Rai, the leader of the council, Julian Ellaby, corporate director of strategy, and Cllr Kam, who is head of highways. And I think Cam is going to introduce the session.
Thank you, Matt. I want to first of all thank everybody for joining today and giving up their time. I know it's important to you, it's certainly important to me about the current situation with the Broadmead Road Bridge. As Matt said, my name is Cam Rai. I'm now the leader of Redbridge Council. I know how deeply this issue affects all of our community. The closure of Broadmead Road Bridge to vehicular traffic has caused significant disruption to the daily lives of residents across our borough. I do share your frustration. It matters as much to me as everybody that's probably logged in today. I use it weekly. I've always used it weekly. My family use it, my friends use it, and obviously all of the people I represent in this borough have had access to it one way or another. As I said in the letter that you've probably received, I'm acutely aware of the disruption that that's causing to the people who live and work or study near the junction and in the wider area. And tonight I want to provide a clear update on where we are, the work that's taken place up to this point, and the next steps that we're taking to try and alleviate the issue that we have and to try and address the matter of this critical infrastructure in our borough. Now, as many of you will know, the bridge is nearly 90 years old. It's just over 87 years old, and it's facing extensive structural defects that pose serious safety concerns for everybody in the area, both those travelling over the bridge and the central line that's running under it. The inspections have revealed some cracks, some falling concrete, and corrosion that threatens the structural integrity of the bridge. That made the decision for us straightforward to close the bridge while we carried out inspections. We had no hesitation in doing that because the safety of all the residents in our borough is paramount. Since the closure, our engineers have undertaken detailed inspections, concrete testing, and structural analysis to assess the scale of the problem. These efforts have confirmed that the bridge is not safe for vehicles, and there's substantial work potentially costing in the region of at least £25 million. And that is required to restore it or to replace it. Unfortunately, years of underfunding to local authorities across the country, and that includes Redbridge, have made securing resources for the type of critical infrastructure work needed incredibly challenging. We are one of the lowest funded boroughs in London. That's just a fact. We're the third lowest funded per head. And over the last 14 years, we've lost over half of our government funding. However, we're doing everything we can in our power to lobby both regional and central government for the funding that's needed. And as I said before, it's imperative that we receive government support after 14 years of underfunding to local authorities. Since becoming leader, I've written to the Secretary of State. We've had correspondence with the Secretary of State and her ministers. I've also met with the Deputy Mayor for London and TfL colleagues. And what they're awaiting is funding settlements for themselves so they can start having conversations with us regarding infrastructure funding. This evening's meeting is an opportunity to keep you informed, answer all your questions, and discuss how we can move forward together. We'll attempt to answer every question that you have today. If there's something that for some reason we don't have the details around, then we'll get back to you and we'll make sure that the answers are published online. I want to thank you everybody again for joining us, for taking your time out. Your engagement is vital. We need to navigate a course through this, and it's important that we come to a solution one way or another about how we get the bridge reinstated. We have a short presentation. One of our officers, Cllr Kam, that was mentioned earlier on, will go through the technical issues and the work that's been carried out over the last year, and then after that we'll take the questions that you have for us. Thank you very much.
You got the slides on, Cllr?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for this important update on the Broadmead Road Bridge. I appreciate your time and attention as we take you through the current status and future plans for the bridge. Broadmead Road Bridge was constructed in 1937. It is 87 years old. These bridges are typically designed to last up to 100 years, but not for the type, frequency and weight of traffic it has been subjected to until recently. Redbridge Council was made responsible for the bridge in 1985 and has been responsible for its inspections and maintenance since then. Unfortunately, due to serious safety concerns, the bridge had to be closed to traffic in July 2023. It has since reopened to cyclists and motorcyclists, and pedestrians are still able to use it. We are following the CS 470 Management of Substandard Structures process. An inspection revealed serious safety concerns, including cracks, falling concrete, and corrosion affecting all areas of the bridge. This posed a major risk to the structural integrity of the bridge and the central line running directly beneath it. To prevent potential loss of life or serious injury, we had no choice but to close the bridge to all vehicular traffic. The green arrow on the process map charts out the steps we have taken, such as the inspection which classified it as a provisionally substandard structure, to deciding it was an immediate risk, to then applying the load mitigation measures that we had to take urgently, which in this case was to close the road. As per the process we are following for the management of substandard structures, this flowchart shows you the steps we have taken so far in green. We are currently gathering the final pieces of information to review if the mitigation measure is still fit for purpose. That mitigation measure is the bridge closure. The final pieces of information we need are the current capacity the bridge can take and the capacity it was designed to take in 1937 when it was built. Once we have that, we will work with our specialist consultants to review them and move on to the next steps, which will be our options report. This is the arrows and box in amber. That report will give us options on what we can do with the bridge to get it back open to traffic. We are working in accordance with CS 450 to build up our knowledge of the bridge's strength. Unfortunately, these inspections take time. They are laborious and cover every inch of the bridge, which is approximately 227 metres long. The people required to undertake these inspections and conduct the testing and analysis of the bridge components are specialists in their field. Councils don't have people like this waiting for situations such as this. We are working at pace, but we are mindful that any miscalculation could be dangerous, and we need to get these right. A principal inspection is a detailed, comprehensive examination of the bridge, which began in autumn 2023 and is now complete. The inspection involved examining all accessible parts of the structure for signs of wear, damage, and deterioration. Additionally, we conducted hammer tapping, a technique used to assess the entirety of the structure. This is a very time-consuming and detailed process, especially with the short working windows we had near the railway tracks, and considering how big the bridge is. Hammer tapping is a cost-effective method and provides valuable information about areas that may require more detailed testing or repairs. It is also needed because it allows us to assess all areas of the bridge, especially areas that are not visible due to previously completed repairs, which you cannot assess by the naked eye. Concrete testing for the bridge commenced in late spring 2024 and is now complete. This testing is essential to evaluate the bridge's strength, durability and overall condition at this moment. The results help us understand the state of the concrete, which other inspections cannot do, and inform our maintenance, repair and rehabilitation decisions. This is a critical test to be done to give us what our options are in the options report. Our inspections and tests have revealed structural wear and tear with age, chloride contamination and carbonation. These issues mean that the bridge will have to remain closed in its current state to avoid further stress from vehicles. However, the central line operations remain safe, as no vehicles are allowed on the bridge. Chloride contamination occurs where you get pollutants or the type of salt grit that we use on our roads, and they work their way into the structure through rainwater. Carbonation occurs naturally. It is a process where carbon dioxide in the air reacts with the concrete, and this causes cracking and breaking away of the concrete that progresses over time. And this is expected of structures coming to the end of their life, like Broadmead Bridge. So far, we have also calculated the loading and drawn up design work for temporary propping to the bridge section just above the central line if needed. Additional drainage has been installed to move water away from the structure joints, and this is to prevent further deterioration. We continue to work very closely with Transport for London and other stakeholders to move forward with inspections, testing, and results analysis. We are continuously writing to government for financial assistance, as we know this is going to be incredibly expensive. Extensive construction work is needed on Broadmead Bridge, and this will require significant time and financial investment. The cost of fixing or replacing the bridge will be in excess of 25 million. Securing funding from the Department for Transport is essential to progress with the repairs or replacement of the bridge. We urge the government to step up and help us, or we'll need to make difficult decisions to fund this project. You can support us by signing our petition and writing to your local MP, and your support is crucial in helping us secure the necessary funding to ensure the safety and functionality of the Broadmead Road Bridge. Please use the QR codes on the screen to revisit our petition page and visit our webpage that will keep you up to date on our progress of work. We expect to have a technical report to determine the current load limit by early 2025. This will allow us to see what type of vehicle, if any, the bridge can take right now. This will be followed by a further report in March 2025 to calculate the as-built limit when the bridge was new in 1937. We need this report because it will inform our options report of strengthening or repairing the bridge to its original design will be enough to take the weight of the types and frequency of traffic we see today. The full options report, which will provide a series of options for bringing traffic back to the bridge, will be available in spring 2025. The options report is the final piece which will give the Council a series of options with high-level designs and costings to make a decision on reopening the bridge. Once that decision is made, work will begin on that option.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Julian Ellaby. I'm the Corporate Director for Strategy and working with my colleagues here. I'm just going to do a brief summary before we open up to the questions. In summary, the Broadmead Bridge has come to the end of its life and will remain closed to traffic except for cyclists, motorcyclists and pedestrians. The principal inspection and hammer tapping have been completed, and it's important to note that there's no risk to the operation of the central line. The concrete testing has been completed, and we've got those initial results which will feed into the technical report which will tell us what the bridge can take now. The options report will be available in the spring of 2025, after which the Council will decide on the way forward. Now, it's important to note that the Council's not doing nothing. I think you've heard that already since it's been closed. So the work we've been doing takes time, as you've heard. It's detailed and requires specialists in their field to complete the tasks and make sure whatever decision we make, it's done with safety in mind. Now, we all know that you're frustrated by the closure of the bridge. We know it's impacting you, and we did not decide to close it lightly, nor do we decide to keep it closed lightly either. But from what our inspections, testing and the specialists we've employed, what they're telling us right now, we have to keep the bridge closed for traffic. So what we'd like to do now is we're happy to work through any questions that you've posted, and obviously you can continue to post during the conversation. Thank you.
So I think we're going to open up to questions now. We've got a number of questions that have been submitted by people on the call. I want to start with one for Diresh, which is an anonymous question that just asks, why have the lights on the bridge been switched off? It's very unsafe for pedestrians and school children, particularly in the winter months when it gets darker.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we published an update on that last week in regards to the lights on the bridge. The lights on the bridge were part of our routine structural testing programme that we have as part of our street lighting capital renewals. And what they showed was that there was some corrosion at the base of those lamp columns. So the lamp columns haven't been turned off. What we've done is we cut the lamp columns down because they were rated as red, which means that we have to cut them down as soon as possible. We installed some temporary floodlights. Appreciate that that's not the best solution, but we had to get some light back to the bridge. We noted that we had some complaints about noise because we installed diesel-generated temporary floodlights because that's what we could get at the time. We should have replaced those by now, which is what my team tell me, that they are now battery operated. So they should stay on for the rest of the night, and hopefully they will not be causing you too much noise at night. But it is our plan to get those lamp columns replaced so we can remove those temporary floodlights.
Thanks, Diresh. We've got a question in from Councillor Huggett, which is, has the structural report been completed? And if so, what are the test results and the recommendations?
So we went through some of that in the slides earlier. So the factors of the test results include structural wear and tear with age. The bridge is coming up to 90 years old. These bridges typically last about 100 years. They're also involving two things nominally, which are carbonation and chloride contamination. Carbonation is a process that occurs naturally. It's where it reacts with the concrete and then that degrades the concrete over time. It's based on a factor of alkalinity, which I'm happy to go through in more detail if needed. Chloride contamination is a process that also happens when we grit the roads, for example. So the salt that we use in the grit gets carried away through rainwater, it goes in through the seeps and the cracks of the bridge, and then that starts to wear and deteriorate the bridge over time. This is something that bridges face across the country as we use various salts and also carbonation as well. It's a natural process because it reacts with carbon dioxide in the air.
Thanks, Diresh. I think our next one is probably a question for Councillor Rai, which is another anonymous one, which is, why are we one of the lowest funded boroughs in London?
Well, that's a really good question. It's a question that I've been tackling and trying to get to the bottom of for the 10 years I've been a councillor. There are funding formulas that government uses, and throughout that there are winners and losers, unfortunately, and we have been at the bottom end of that. They use, I think, in my mind, I don't believe the formulas are fit for purpose. I believe they're completely outdated, and they harm Redbridge particularly, amongst other boroughs. So we are at the moment the third lowest funded borough per head in London, and I think that's a challenge that we are putting forward to the new government about addressing the fairer funding, to make sure that funding that they do have is distributed more fairly, and also then to make sure that it reflects our borough's areas of deprivation, our population numbers and our need. So there has been a challenge. It's been ignored, I would say, for a long time, and I'm hopeful that we have a government that's going to be listening in the coming months and years to make sure that we do get the funding we deserve, because it does make a difference to every one of us. It impacts on everything that we can do in our borough. And while we do things really well in many cases, I'm not claiming to be perfect, I know there's a lot more we could be doing if we had just the average funding in London.
Thanks, Cam. We've got another anonymous question, I think, for you, Diresh. Is the bridge inspection report detailing the defects available for the public to read? And if not, when will it be? And has the inspection been done by one party? Have we sought a second opinion?
So I'll tackle the first one first. So the principal inspection and the hammer tapping is complete, as we said. We're currently running those through our structural engineers, we're running them through our consultants as well as our internal team. We're sense checking those, and the idea is, yes, to make those publicly available. In terms of have they been completed by one person, yes, the principal inspections were completed by our structural engineers. It took a painstakingly long time because of the time it took to get with the working windows. When you're working next to railway tracks, you sometimes only have 2.5 to 3 hours at a time. We think it's best to use the same structural engineer team. They're familiar with the bridge, and they also know the working operations of Transport for London working next to their railway tracks. Transport for London have been very, very accommodative of us. They've always prioritised our inspections. But yeah, they've all been done by one team for those particular inspections. For the concrete testing, we use a separate concrete testing specialist. That's just because they are specialists in their field.
Thank you. Just having it down on the list. Another one for yourself, Daresh. Who would be responsible if any part of the bridge structure collapsed on the railway line underneath?
That would be the London Borough of Redbridge.
Yeah, thank you. I'll send a very similar one. Question from Emma Taylor, Daresh. How is it that we are still determining whether closing the bridge was the correct decision?
Yeah, hi Emma. So as part of our management process, so with the stuff that I explained earlier in the slides, you constantly have to reevaluate if your mitigation measure, which in this case the road closure, is correct. It's part of the process to make sure that we don't jump to a conclusion and then we're stuck with that decision. We consistently review if that's the right answer. You know, the process itself is iterative. You have to go through it one step at a time. These inspections have to happen. So it's quite right that every day we are challenging the structural engineers, we are challenging our consultants, if the road closure is still the right thing to do. Unfortunately, with the results that we've had to date, that is still the case, that the road needs to remain closed. However, all the inspections that we're doing lead up to this final options report, which will give us the options, and these options will range from demolish and rebuild to partial renewal, things like that. So what they give us are options that might be better and quicker for us to reopen the bridge, or it might not be because it's not financially viable.
I think that question is a fair one that's come from them. It's one that I've asked probably as a lay person speaking to officers. And I think ultimately we're all hopeful that the options report gives us a solution, or an option at least, that allows us to fairly quickly reopen the bridge if that's possible. I know that's a long shot, but I also appreciate that if we take every step we've taken so far and we continue to assess the bridge, then that may be one of the options that allows us to have a partial or a full reopening, depending on what work we may have to do, what remedial work we may have to do to get it open. So that for me is probably the bit that I'm hoping for, that there is a lower cost, short-term time frame option that comes forward that we can take.
Thanks. We've got an anonymous question that's for me. Can we make the slides available? Yes, we can. We will publish the slides, this recorded session, and the frequently asked questions on our website, and we'll share those on social media. We've got another anonymous question. The traffic in Cllr Kam Rai is very bad. They've got some safety concerns being caused by the pollution. There's black soot deposits on the windows where this has never happened before. Is this something that we can take a look at our diversions and where we're sending traffic?
We can certainly take a look at cases. We know that we do have roads that are experiencing more traffic than usual because of the closure of Broadmead Bridge. If you have particular concerns around speeding and things like that, please send it through. You can contact the council. We will investigate and respond back to you. I will take that away with the team and have a look.
Great, thanks. Got another anonymous one, Daresh. Why can't the bridge be opened one way for cars?
So at the moment, what the concrete test results are showing us in the reports that we've seen so far is that the main areas are the approach parts of the bridge. So it's not even a case of you get to the middle of the bridge where you may see the worst deterioration. It's actually on the end ramps. So the concrete testing is currently telling us that we shouldn't be even allowing vehicles to cross that bridge. So we can't, at the moment, make it one way. Now, when we get to the part where we release the technical report, the first set of technical reports, that will be able to tell us of what the bridge currently can take. How they do that is via a method of deduction. So they'll start at 44 tonne. Can the bridge take a 44 tonne vehicle? Can the bridge take 30, 24, 12, 7.5, 3.5? That's the way that we go. So we will. That's what that report will give us. But right now, it's telling us that we shouldn't allow vehicles to cross that bridge.
Thanks, Daresh. Question from Natasha, which is, in a nutshell, if we don't receive any government funding, the bridge won't be reopened. Is that what we're saying?
I'll answer that. So no, I think the thing is, right now, I'll be really clear. If the council here decided today that we were going to spend in excess of £25 million to reopen the bridge. We would have to borrow that money. And the moment we borrow that money, as there is no repayment for, there's no income raised from having a bridge or a road network, it would mean that we would be putting somewhere in the region of £3.5–4 million a year onto our day-to-day spending. So we would have to take out £3–4 million out of our day-to-day spending on everything else that we do, which at the moment, as I explained earlier, we're already amongst the lowest funded. So that will be a decision taken at that stage if we have exhausted every other opportunity from regional government, because there's a bit of an overlap there from regional government in terms of TfL and the GLA and with national government. So my focus right now is to get government and regional government to understand the need we have here locally and to listen to us and to understand also the position that we're in as a local authority and as all local authorities have been over the last decade, to understand that it isn't something that should be forced upon local authorities to repair when funding has been at such a low and cuts to funding to local government has been amongst the harshest in any government department. So we'll be fighting for every penny we can get and fighting our corner with government and local government, regional government. And if at the end of that we can't, then we'll have a decision to take on whether we borrow the money to replace the bridge.
I just wanted to add a couple of comments, if I may. What's important is that we are really well prepared for what those costs will actually be. And I think this is the work I'm doing with colleagues like Diresh to make sure we understand what the total cost will end up being and make sure that we're organised. So we have working groups ready and working already, which involves TfL, our emergency services and Waltham Forest, looking at kind of what these costs could be and how we work together and coordinate. We're already in touch with central government as well about the potential costs to make sure that we can move on this quickly. Alongside that, there is also another working group which looks at all the technical elements which Diresh has outlined in detail now. So I just want to reassure you that we're not waiting, we're actually working already on terms of what this could mean for us and making sure we're prepared. We're warming up the people to make sure that they support us. So, and that will give us some confidence that we can actually get to the correct solution for this situation.
Thanks, Julian. There's a question on here about, are we in contact with the owners of the Station Way Bridge, which Essex County Council are responsible for? Someone else in the chat has responded to it, but I think there's an action there for us to reach out to ECC to join the stakeholder working group and get them involved to see how we can join up, how we approach that. We've got another question from Sherry, who's in response to something you said in the presentation, Derek, about making some difficult decisions around the next steps. What do you think those difficult decisions are?
Well, I think those difficult decisions revolve around a number of things. Mostly it's around what decision we take. Do we... It really depends what the options report comes back with. So if the options report comes back with and says your most viable option is to demolish and rebuild, that's when the likes of myself, Julian, the leader, will look at really lobbying and finding that funding to go and do that. The other options that are available to us, what I mentioned, is partial renewal, replacement of certain elements of the bridge. We also have a very costly ongoing maintenance with that. So it's something called cathodic protection. And what that does is it sends a current round to essentially stop that deterioration of those elements that happens. And when you renew something, you want to be able to protect it to ensure that it doesn't deteriorate what you renew. So we have various different options that we can take. The difficult ones are going to be mostly around cost, trying to analyse how much cost that's going to be over a 5, 10, 15, 20 year period, and how much life that's going to give us. So if one option is only going to give us 5 years, but it's cost effective, there's a decision that needs to be made in terms of, do we take that option and then look to then demolish and rebuild, or do we take option A and then look at option B and then work towards that long-term demolish and rebuild? So those are the kind of difficult decisions that we need to make. But yeah, we'll know more when we get those reports through.
Thanks, Diresh. There's a question here from an anonymous user that I think I can answer, which was who owned the bridge prior to 1985? The answer to that is the Greater London Council. And when the Greater London Council was abolished its assets were distributed amongst the London boroughs, and when the Greater London Authority was formed in 1999, they didn't take the assets back on. So that's a fairly straightforward question. This is one that I guess anyone around the table can take. It is believed that Redbridge Council was made aware of structural issues by TfL in 2014. What steps, if any, were taken to address these concerns, and why has no significant action been taken in the last 10 years?
So I can take that one. So yes, so the council received a letter in 2014. Before that, we undertook a general inspection just before that letter came, earlier in 2014. We have undertaken inspections since. We've also undertaken some maintenance, I believe, in the 2015, 2016 and 2017 financial years, so between that period. An inspection is a snapshot in time. So when we conducted an inspection in 2014, 2016, 2018, 2023, 2024, the one that we've done now, a road closure of the bridge wasn't deemed to be needed. It was just a case of general inspection things. So the council is currently working on the here and now. We are focusing on what we can do moving forward. We're in this position where our inspection that we held last year said that we needed to close the bridge, and that's the point that we're working towards.
That's great, thank you. Next one, I think is probably a question for Julian or for the leader. Why can't we divert funding from other departments to prioritise this work? For example, from developing leisure centres or the Lido?
Okay, so I get this question asked often around why are we investing in a Lido or other leisure facilities. I think the first bit is that work has started on the Wanstead Leisure Centre, and we're 12 months roughly away from its completion. So to divert money from there would be probably seen as wasting public resources if we left it where it was right now. And the second part of it is that the projects such as the Lido or the Wanstead Leisure Centre are designed to, at the very least, wash their own face. And so what I mean by that is that the money that we spend on that, the income that's coming in from their use, comes back to help repay the borrowing or the money that we've taken out from our capital resources. So there is a bit. So in both those cases, there's an opportunity for us to have money coming in from their use. So they're not projects that are designed just to outlay money, but they're actually projects that we're hoping will generate and are expecting to generate an income that we then plough back into other resources. Because as I said right at the beginning, we're a borough, just like many local authorities, that are under financial pressures, and so therefore wherever we can generate income from, we get to use that and plough that back into other parts of the services, such as social care, children's and adult social care, and other parts of the services that everyone expects. And when it comes to infrastructure like road resurfacing or bridges or any other infrastructure like that, there is no payback. So immediately, the moment we spend that money, we have to then start setting aside money each year from our day-to-day spending to repay that infrastructure funding. And that's a challenge we have, because if we're low funded right now, and we start to take a lot of money out of our day-to-day spending, then that means the services that everybody relies on, from our street cleansing, our parks, our social care, our children's services, will all suffer, because some money will have to be taken out of each one of those areas to make way for the capital repayment that we would have to make. So that's why there's a challenge. So therefore, if it was as easy as that, as just spending the money without any knock-on impact, then we could have done that. We could have started that immediately. But the point is that there is a huge knock-on impact on our day-to-day spending.
Can I just add 2 points on this briefly? One is to say that as an authority, we actually lead on over 400 different services. So the demands across all our services are quite considerable. But what's interesting recently is that there's been an independent assessment across the whole country of how good local authorities are with your money. And we've just been assessed as the #1 in London for the best value for money. So we really are conscious of making sure that we use resources effectively and well. And so we won't take our eye off that ball.
Thanks, Julian. We've got a couple of questions in from Terry. I think we've covered some of them. but I think in broad terms, Redbridge have had the responsibility for the bridge for almost 40 years. Why have we not built up reserves over time to keep up the bridge? And why don't we have the money to repair the bridge?
Well, I guess I can get on. There's many different priorities that we have. I mean, particularly from a highway service. We resurface roads, we resurface footways. We're building, flood alleviation projects across the borough. These are all pressing needs, and I think there is a prioritisation process that we follow in all of those measures. It's a case of saving that money over that 40-year period is difficult to do. Because it's something that you're not necessarily expecting. But what we're looking at right now in this situation is that we have spent a considerable amount of money conducting these inspections, conducting these tests, and we are going to be fighting for funding to get this bridge back open to traffic.
I think just to add to that, I think it's a really good question, Terry, and I think that I think the local government should be building up their reserves. I think local government should be creating pots of money for infrastructure funding. The problem is, none of us have been here for 40 years, firstly, let's be clear on that. But I think also that in the time that I've been in local government, and probably everybody around this table, we've been in a position where our funding has been cut every single year for the last 14 years, to the point that we've lost over half of our funding. And so what that's meant is the ability to put money back into reserves each year has become more and more difficult. It's become almost impossible. We're seeing a housing crisis right now. We're seeing particularly across London, where rents are increasing astronomically. So our ability to find suitable accommodation for people that present themselves homeless is becoming more and more difficult, in anywhere in London, let alone within Redbridge. And similarly, we're seeing additional demand on social care, on children's services, which is going through the roof compared to where we were 10, 15 years ago. So not only are the demands on our services increasing, the cost of those services are increasing, and our funding has been dropping for the last 14 years. So that presents us a huge challenge, because how would any of us suddenly say we're going to add money to our savings in our bank if our funding, if our income, if our salaries drop by half over the last decade? And that is the challenge that we're facing. Hence why I'm being, when I'm speaking to people in government and in local government and in regional government, I am being clear that this is, putting this burden onto local government and putting this burden onto local authorities that have had their funding slashed to this level is unfair, and therefore we need to have other partners stepping up and helping.
Thanks, Cam. This is one for Diresh, fairly straightforward one. It's an anonymous question, sorry. I've seen cyclist motorbikes using the footpath rather than the road since it's been opened. What are we doing to stop this?
So what we'll do is we will conduct an inspection, we'll do an audit, and then we will beef up some of the signage that we've got, and then we'll send around some communications on the engagement page. We also had similar conversations around in our working group with the Metropolitan Police. They're also saying that, just make sure that the signage is correct. I think that is the first thing that we can do. So we'll get around to doing that as soon as possible.
Our next question's in from Emma Taylor, which is, could the bridge be opened only to buses?
So no, at the moment, the bridge, according to what we've got so far, says that no, the bridge needs to remain closed. As we are doing that technical report, that's coming to us shortly, that again, as I said before, will assess the levels, and they'll do it as a matter of deduction. So they'll start from 44 tonne, then they'll go down and down and down. So if by the off chance that report comes out and says that you can get 26 tonne over the bridge, that might be a consideration. But at this moment in time, the reports are saying that we cannot have traffic over the bridge.
Thanks. Our next one's in from Jenna James. Have we engaged with TfL to book tentative possessions of the central line to facilitate future repair work? There are very long lead-in times for these possessions.
Yes, correct. So at the moment, no, we have not. What we need to understand first is what works we're going to do to the bridge. So we can put the possessions in place. At the same time, Transport London will need various risk assessments, they'll need method statements, they'll need various other processes in place before they start to consider those. So those possessions will take a long time to implement, but we are talking to their team on a daily, weekly basis. They've been very good to us so far. We've been working really well together. But when we know more about the various options on the table and what we decide, we will then start to make those conversations a bit more formal in regards to all of the possessions. If I may sort of explain possessions as well, possessions is an element where you have to, for everybody else who don't understand the term possessions, there is such thing called rail possessions or track possessions. So we have it where you're working over the Central Line, where you're working over the Elizabeth Line, or any other major rail infrastructure that you have. So you have to work with the various network operators of that rail track to get possessions. The reason why it takes so long is because you have various other works that are going on. The Woodford rail track is extremely busy with the upgrade works, not only that Central Line are doing, but everybody else around the railway track as well. So that takes a lot of time. It also means that when you gain a track possession, you're effectively closing the Central Line for that period of time. So if that's over one night, one day, you lose the Central Line for that period. So you're almost looking at rail replacement services and things, which is why they take a long time. They're often very complex to do.
Thanks, Duresh. Next question is one I know we've had a lot of conversations about internally. This one comes from Caroline Ward, which is, why haven't the traffic lights been sorted out? Vehicles are still having to wait at red lights when the bridge lights are green. It doesn't make sense.
So as soon as the bridge was closed, we spoke to Transport for London signals team. So Transport London own and operate the signals. They rephased the signals very quickly for us to give us the most amount of green time to everywhere else on the bridge. I know that there's a few seconds, or I think it was about 5 or 6 seconds of green time for the bridge. Unfortunately, we can't change that without fully decommissioning the signals. What we are looking to do moving forward is to work with Transport for London to look at rephasing further wider and to see what else we can do to reduce that time. But now that we've got motorcyclists and cyclists going over the bridge, we also need to ensure that they have adequate time to go on and come off the bridge. But we'll review that all together with the wider piece of work that we'll look to initiate with Transport for London.
Thanks, Duresh. We've got about a quarter of an hour left. I'm going to move on to some kind of broad themes where we've had lots of questions about the same thing. So I'm just going to touch on a few questions we've had in about sort of how the council spends its money and priorities. So there's a few questions in about cycle lanes, why we've invested so much money in cycle lanes in Aldersbrook and from Woodford County down to the Waterworks roundabout, and then about some of the proposed work to the Ilford Arrival scheme. The bridge was highlighted quite a long time ago. Why is it that we're spending money on these things and not on the bridge?
I'll answer part of that, and I'm sure Darius can get some details. This is a question that comes up often if there's something that people feel is less of a priority than other things. What I'd say is that we often get the ability to bid for grant money from, for example, the GLA. So the Greater London Authority, the Mayor of London, will have projects that they want to roll out across London, and they will give out grants to local authorities. So if we're getting money essentially for free, we can only use it for the purpose that the Mayor of London and the GLA will outline for its use. But when it comes, then I think we shouldn't just stop doing other work simply because we have other priorities. Absolutely, if I could redirect all that money tomorrow and get the bridge reopened, I'd do it, but we can't. So if we're given money, for example, the Ilford Arrival bid right now, that's £3 million that we're receiving from the GLA to open up Roding Valley, to open up a pocket park, and to connect cycling and walking routes between Ilford and the north and west of the borough, and then further south. We should take that money if it's available, if we've proven it to have a successful bid. But it's not an either or, because that money comes from a different source. It doesn't come from you or I. It's coming from a grant. Well, not directly, but it comes from a grant that comes from the GLA. And if we didn't get it, and if we didn't use it, then somebody else in another borough would use it and would receive that money. So I think they're not either or problems, and it's not that we as a local authority are deciding to spend that money. It's money that we receive in grant form, and that's very similar to a lot of our cycling projects. But I think if Darius just gives some more details on that.
Yeah, so in particular for Woodford New Road, that money was funded by Transport for London via our local implementation plan. So the local implementation plan revolves around a 3-year period, and we get to bid for funding from Transport for London. So that was that. Now, with the Aldersbrook cycle schemes, that was, in terms of money in the grand scheme of things, very inexpensive compared to the funding that we would get. So when you demonstrate that you will build something, you will get additional funding from the GLA, which we've secured. You'll get additional funding from Transport for London. So it's almost an invest to receive. And that's how we've done those. They were fairly inexpensive in the grand scheme of things. We've also done something as well with electric vehicle charging points. So that was, all of that money is completely grant funded, at no direct cost to Redbridge Council taxpayers. So maybe that will help answer that question.
Yeah, thank you. I think the next thing we've got a lot of questions in about is how we're working with stakeholders and with other councils nearby, and about sort of what other councils have done with bridges and structures of this age.
Yeah, so I mean, there are bridges around London that have mitigation measures. Some have temporary traffic lights, some have various other measures which are just additional monitoring because they might not be at the same stage that we are at currently with Broadmead Bridge. I'm sure most of you on the call will know the situation with Station Way Bridge with Essex. There's some ground destabilisation there, which is why they've got temporary traffic lights up. I mean, this is probably not one to compare direct because the costs are astronomical, but you're looking at something like Hammersmith Bridge, where they're in a similar situation to us, but their repair goes into the hundreds of millions. They've been working with the Department for Transport, they've been working with Transport for London, they've also received some funding from those two bodies as well. And we're looking at what they've done, we're looking to engage with what they've done to try and secure similar outcomes in order to get the funding that we need.
Thanks, Darius. Another big question we've got in is when is this going to happen and how long can we expect it to take, i.e. are we going to have a new bridge by 2030?
It's a difficult question to say. Or it's a difficult question to answer rather. So we've got the options report that's coming to us in spring 2025. We'll have to sit down and assess that, look at the financials, look at the high level designs, what is it offering us. We then have to work with Transport for London, as we mentioned before, with the rail possessions. We have to get all that stuff. We've got to get a lot of things in line before we can even get a spade in the ground. So this is going to take some time, but we're committed to delivering that.
I think just to answer that, look, I absolutely understand the frustration. I understand the need to have the bridge open. But I think everyone also needs to, share in the fact that it is a large, possibly a very large infrastructure project. So I'm hopeful that when we get the options report, that Darius will come back to me and say, we've had this assessment done, and if we do these 2 or 3 parts of work, that suddenly we can open the bridge to limited traffic. Even I'd take that right now. But that's me being hopeful and hoping that that's the case, and therefore we could do that fairly quickly, and that's what I'd hope for. If we had to replace the whole bridge and rebuild the whole bridge, I could see that taking a significant amount of time. I can see that we would need to obviously first get the money, get the planning permission, and then the logistics of it are what is probably most difficult, because it goes over the central line, and we would need permissions to work over the central line, and then there'll be disruption obviously to the central line. That's I suppose what is the most challenging and frustrating part of the whole of this conversation that we've been having for the last year.
Right. We've got an anonymous question. I think this is one for you, Cllr Rai. £485 million from the City Renewals Project has been announced by Rachel Reeves as allocated to London. Can we tap into this funding and use some of that to fix the bridge?
I'm glad people are looking at the same things that we're looking at. I appreciate that people are looking at every opportunity here. So we're engaging with every possible fund that's out there, and every possible announcement that's out there. We're looking at how that might be a way, in some cases, shoehorn our bid in, or to make use of it to come our way. That absolutely is one of our priorities. It's certainly my priority politically. I'm engaging with our local MPs and obviously with the ministers to see if any announcement they make, if there's a way that we can tap into that funding and put ourselves right at the front. I'm trying to be as sharp elbowed as possible. It's why I've also asked every one of you and all the residents locally to make sure that you sign our petition, but also write to your MPs. Keep the issue at the top of the agenda for all of the MPs in the borough that are impacted. And I say everybody's impacted one way or another, whether the bridge is in your ward or not, or in your constituency or not. The residents from across our borough use the space, use the area. We're not confined by wards. We use every part of the borough. So absolutely, every funding announcement that comes from government, I'm looking at it eagerly, and I'm asking officers the very next hour to say what's the possibility of us putting a bid in for this money, or what's the possibility here between the criteria, which we have to read the detail about, that allows us to access it.
Thanks, Cam. So we've had a couple of questions that suggest that if the bridge was in Ilford, we would have sorted it by now. Have we got a response to that one?
Yeah, I mean, I probably find this question, and I've had it a few times. I do find it one of the most unfair and the most frustrating of questions, because as a councillor, and I live in the borough, and I have friends and family across the borough, and we're not, as I said, we're not confined by the wards. We use all of us. I think we use every part of our borough, and every part of our borough matters to us. And not just because my friends and family use it and my neighbours, but every single person in the borough are people that I represent one way or another. I represent you. So if we have a problem, for me, it's a problem for us collectively as a borough to solve. It's not about where it is. It would make no difference at all. There will be no difference in the process. There will be no difference in the way that the work that's been carried out in the last 12 months, 14 months has been for a bridge, if it was in Ilford, whether it was in Hainault, whether it was in Chapel Heath or anywhere else. The only time I suppose there might be a difference is if the bridge was being run by the Department or if there was a road that's being looked after by the Department for Transport or by TfL directly, that they would be looking after that work. But the work they would have to do would be entirely the same. It would be no different. So I just want people to rest assured that there's no part of the borough that means more to me. They all mean equally the same amount. I receive emails and phone calls and correspondence, regardless of where an issue arises. It's on me and all of the officers around the table that you see, and the many others that work in the council, to try and find solutions, and to be honest about when we can do something straight away, or whether we're going to have a challenge about delivering something and how we're going to try and get there.
Thanks, Cam. I think the next question we've had in a lot is probably one for me, which is, if a question's been asked and not addressed today, when are we going to answer it? I'm going to do what we've done in the past with sessions like this, and what I'm doing now, just to kind of use the rest of the time as effectively as we can. I'm going to go through, I'm going to pick out the key themes, and we're going to respond to them in one go on our website when we've published the slides and the recording, and that'll be on redbridge.gov.uk, and we'll share that on social media as well. We've had a couple of questions in about funding, and if we do manage to get something built, are we ruling out tolls to try and recoup some of the cost?
I mean, I don't think that's something that's crossed our mind at the moment yet in terms of tolling. I mean, our focus has purely been to get these inspections and this testing done. We recognise that you're all very, very frustrated. This is affecting your lives on a daily basis, maybe on an hourly basis. Every journey that you take has been affected. So at the moment, we're not focused on that. We are focused on trying to get the results for our options report and getting that decided so we can make those positive actions to try and address the frustrations that you're facing right now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're allowed to toll as a local authority, but we could look into it. But I think really right now our priority is to try and find the best solution, and even in the meantime, I know that officers and myself I've been asking them to have a look at all the other options in the area to see if we can reduce traffic, or we can open up routes that potentially allow people a different way and a route around Woodford and other parts of our borough. So I think the questions we're always asking, and I'll continue to ask the officers here, is to find a way to see if there's something that we could do in a different way, whether there's a road we could reopen or that's been closed, or whether there's a route that we can help to open up, or whether there are restrictions that might be released to allow more traffic and more people to get around the borough. Because we absolutely understand, and I see it, that if you've got there are a few routes that kind of connect to the north and south of Woodford in that respect, and we need to make sure that there are ways around that and opening up the different routes. And we're even having conversations with, and we have a conversation with TfL to see if the bus routes can be moved around or frequency can be changed, to see if that will at least help people get around the area as well. So it is something we're continually having a conversation about. It's not forgotten about. It's something that we probably speak about, I'd say, weekly. I do, at least I bring it up every week. I know the officers are dealing with it on a daily basis, and I'm always asking for an update to see what we can do differently. So if you have ideas, I'm happy to take them, send them in to me, because often there are ideas that come from local people that might just be a solution or to make a bit of a difference for everybody.
Thanks, Cam. I'm going to amalgamate two questions, which is, now that we've got a Labour government and this is a Labour-led council, why can't we work directly with the government to get this sorted? And what has been the response to the request for funding that we've already sent out?
So we do have a Labour government. I'm sure everybody's also noticed that there's a lot of work for them to do, and they've been quite clear about the challenges that they've had when they've taken over in government right now. But I think the stark difference right now for me, and I can speak politically, officers can't, is that we had no door open to us over the last 12 months. But I have had doors open in terms of having a conversation, wanting to speak to us, trying to understand our problem. Also, they're not giving the money away, let's be honest. But what I am saying to them is that we have this is a priority, and it's a priority for me, and it's important for our borough, and it's important for the people who live here. So I want them to come forward with ideas and to work up solutions. So as they get their feet under the table, understand what funding is available to them, understand what projects they can fund. As I said, I'm eagle-eyed looking out for every announcement that comes forward, and we're writing to them for the same thing, to say, is there a way that we can access that money? I think the initial conversations we've had with TfL have been that they're waiting to understand what their capital settlement is. So right now, almost all their capital program they know that they have got it earmarked for the underground service largely, and for the transport service. But as an investment or as a capital program is released to them for other parts of the infrastructure, that will be a time when we can say to them, well, right, okay, you've had this money now allocated to you. How much of it can we have? How much of it will you help support the bridge in Broadmead Road? And similarly, we've had conversations with ministers, or we've had correspondence with ministers. They have responded. They have replied. They've asked us to go and speak to regional government, but we're going back to them now saying that regional government are waiting for you. We still want to meet with you and understand how you can help us. So those are ongoing. It's not, the door's not closed on us, and that for me is at least encouraging, that we're not being ignored. At least the important thing now is to get to the next step and to understand what funding might be available for us.
If it's all right, Leader, I just wanted to add one thing, because as an officer, I think what you need to be clear about as well is we have officers engaging with officers. So in other words, we talk to the officers at TfL, we talk to the officers at the Department for Transport and so on. And I think that connection, because what they need from us is the detail and the technical, so that when we then have the leader may be able to have political conversations, we need to be able to make sure that we've actually done all the work, the detailed technical work, to make sure that we've got a really, really strong case. And so that's the work that Dirish is leading on, and that I'm supporting him with. And I think that bit is really important in making sure that when we do ask for this funding, that we actually have a really strong case to receive it.
Thanks. We've had lots of questions about the upcoming reports that are coming in, which is essentially, can we be any more specific than spring for the next report? Is it closer to March or June? What are we going to learn when we get that report?
So that final options report will give us the options. I mean, I'm going to say June because I'd rather be slightly sort of later on the date and then maybe come back a little bit sort of earlier on in June to you. But I would say June. It will be late spring. And what that options report will give you, and give all of us, is an idea of what we can do to get traffic back open to the bridge. So options will revolve around, partial renewals, replacements of this, replacements of that particular part, protecting that then after that's been replaced, or it will encompass a demolish and rebuild option, or maybe multiple demolish and rebuilds options as part of that options report. So that is the final piece of the jigsaw that will be able to allow us to make a decision on what we do next with the bridge.
Thanks, Ash. We've hit 7 o'clock, so I'm just going to ask the last question that we've had in a number of times is, what are the next steps in terms of engaging with the public, and when are we going to hold another one of these meetings?
So I think, so I'll answer part of that. Julian's probably got some details around that. So we're continuing the work around the working groups. So there's one that's led by officers and specialists about making sure that we're staying on track to deliver the options report and to make sure that all the surveying work's being done correctly. And then there is a working group that includes both London Borough Redbridge, also London Borough of Waltham Forest, because they're impacted as well, even though the bridge is in Redbridge. To make sure that we've got the ambulance service, the police, the fire brigade, because they're vital services, and that's another reason why, apart from the frustrations we all share, why we need to make sure that the bridge does open and that we do have access between both parts of the borough, because otherwise it's only adding time onto journeys for what our emergency services. So those are the 2 pieces of work happening. I think we're going to arrange another one of these briefings probably for the early part of next year. So around maybe February time, I think, so that we can have an update, hopefully, depending on the report. So it will be a moving target in terms of that date, I think, because we want to be able to come back with new information and be able to share where we are with the reports. I vitally need everybody, as I said, I need everyone's help to make sure that we keep putting the pressure on. You're welcome to write to TfL, you're welcome to write to government, but I would say write to your MPs to collectively work together to lobby to get this money for us. I'll be doing that anyway, and please sign our petitions. I think everything that you can do to help is going to be appreciated from me, and I'm sure that from everyone else around the table and other members of the public. So I think anything along those lines that we can do collectively, so that we can all play a part in trying to make this move on, is going to be appreciated.
I just wanted to add very briefly, I think what's important is that we make sure that we provide information for you on a regular basis. So something we've talked about is our online content. So we will be continuously updating the website and making sure our social media channels cover this as well. I think what's important, I think you've heard from Diresh tonight quite a bit about some of the activity he can do in response to what you have asked. And I think we can make sure that we then follow up on that and kind of confirm that we've actually delivered what you've asked for. So I'll make that commitment here. I'll work with Diresh to make sure that we give you kind of regular communications, and just to reiterate the leader's point that obviously the more input you can give us, the better we can do this, and we will push to move as quickly as we can on this.
Brilliant, thanks, Julian. I think other questions that we've had in, I think we've covered a great deal of it, so I think we'll look at wrapping this up. I don't know, Julian, if you had something just to finish us off with.
So obviously from my perspective, I don't know if the leader wants to add anything, but yeah. So just to say from our perspective, I mean, you've heard quite a lot of the detail tonight about the technical aspects of this. Just to reiterate, we do have the working groups, so we will continue to progress with those as well. We are engaging kind of with local residents as we go, so we'll make sure that that's kept up to speed. And what we'll do, working with colleagues around the table, we'll pick up any actions that have come out of the questions as well, and try to kind of go at this as much as we can. Just to reassure you, as officers, we are pursuing this regularly and constantly, and we'll do our endeavour our best to get all the funding that we require. And I do know from Diresh's point of view that he is also working constantly on making sure the technical aspect of this is absolutely right. If I can hand over to the leader to conclude, that'd be great.
Thank you, Julian. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time out today, taking the time out of the evening to join. I know it's difficult because I'd love more than anyone else to say that we have a solution for this and to be able to announce it. I would love to be able to be in that position, but I can't be in that place right now. I think we all appreciate you dedicating part of your day to hear about the situation with Broadmead Road Bridge and to share your thoughts and your questions that are coming today. I do understand how much you want to see the bridge reopened. I really do share your frustration at the current situation. I've wanted every step that we've taken to this point to be completed much quicker than it has been. I've asked the same questions and more of officers about how much quicker we could get to the stage where we are now. But I've also had to accept, and I understand why, that it's taken the time it has taken. It is complex. It is something that requires specialists to come in. And I think none of us, councillors or officers, have come into public service to close bridges or to frustrate our local residents. You know, and as I said, I wish I was able to say that the bridge will be reopened now, but as everyone has heard tonight, this is not a simple problem to solve, but it is one that we will solve, and we need to all work together for that. You know, my purpose is really to make everyone's lives better, to support our communities, and to ensure that vital infrastructure like the bridge and like anything else that you use in the borough is safe first and foremost, and then also reliable, because it has to be safe. That's the first key element of this, and we wouldn't have closed the bridge if we felt that the bridge was safe. As you've heard tonight, we've worked continuously over the last 14 odd months behind the scenes to assess the extent of the structural issues and explore any possible solutions. As I said, I'm still hopeful that we get a solution in the options report that says that Dirish comes back to me and says, you know what, leader, if we spend this amount of money and we can open it fairly quickly, then I'd be over the moon with that, and I would press ahead with that. But we have to wait and see what the solutions are. It has been painstaking, it has been a complex piece of work, but it's essential to ensure that everyone is kept safe. The work we've undertaken is starting to at least see the light at the end of this part of this tunnel, that we're starting to see the reports come forward. You're getting some timelines around when the options reports will come forward, and also the survey reports. I know it's not been easy for anybody. I know it's really frustrating for everybody who lives particularly in the area, but anybody who's living in any part of the borough who's had to use or who connects themselves across our borough. We'll look at putting together another meeting in the early part of next year. I'm happy to do that face to face. I've got no issue with that. It makes no difference. It's to make sure it's convenient for everybody who wants to join, depending on, and we'll have a look at how we've had attendance today, because it seems that we've got a significant number of people who've joined online. But once again, I want to thank everybody for their patience, for their engagement, for any questions that haven't been answered or we didn't have the answer to today. We'll make sure that it's put online. And please keep in touch by looking at our page online on the Redbridge website around Broadmead Road Bridge. I've asked officers to make sure that that's kept updated so that you get an update. However minor that update might be, you at least get the update to understand what we're doing, because I want to assure everyone of one thing. This is not a matter that's being forgotten. It's not a matter that we're just saying, you know, we're not thinking about it. It's a matter that we are talking about each and every week, throughout the week, and asking officers about what the next steps are. And any help that you guys can give, and any help that any of the residents can give, it is appreciated. Please, as I said, do write to your MPs. Do sign our petition that we put on the website as well. And obviously, if you've got any ideas of how we can alleviate some of the traffic issues around the area, I'm all ears. I'm happy to listen to people from the ground. People sometimes often know their area better than many of us can know as well. So I'm happy to hear from you on that as well. I hope you have a great evening. I want to thank you all again for joining.